Okay, so we have a little bit of time, so I thought basically just to orient you, and I'm probably who's first time in Israel here in the group? Wow, everyone.
I've been here.
You know, you've been here a lot when they wave you through the passport control. My mother, she came through so many times, they finally made Aliyah. My parents in their 80s finally came to live here. So it's never too late to make major life changes. I think having 16 of their 19 grandchildren here was also a big Anyway, what I want to explain in terms of the view here, since you have been touring a little in Jerusalem, you did the tunnel tour, yeah? So here you can get literally the overview. This is one of the best views in all of Israel, and certainly in terms of Jerusalem and the holiest spot, this is the place to look at. So let me just focus on a little bit of information. And again, you guys, you know your Bible, and the Bible comes alive in the land of Israel, and this is the place to view it from. And when I'm teaching my students here, the thing I always focus on is the power of information, because information and truth, same thing. And if you know what's going on in the world, there's a war of disinformation going on. It's the world of lies and the world of truth. And I make it a point of not necessarily being political, but just dealing with the facts. And the facts make the best case. You don't have to be a propagandist here at all. So just deal with a little bit of information, something you could take away. When I bring Jewish groups up here, I always like to give them one idea. Why is Jerusalem so important? I mean, if you think about where we're located geographically, if you can imagine in your mind's eye, Canadians good with geography? You know, Ambrose Bierce, who wrote during the American Civil War, he said, war is God's way of teaching Americans geography. So hopefully you guys will do better. Israel's sitting in the middle of, Jerusalem is sitting in the middle of the land of Israel. It's actually kind of inaccessible. You came up on a bus, air conditioned is easy, but it's a bit of a walk to get from the coast. It's hilly here. It's kind of indefensible. There is one spring down below for sure, but there's not easy access to water, to trade. The main original part of Jerusalem is down below us. As a matter of fact, have you guys been to David City? John, they going to David City?
Tomorrow.
Oh, so that's an amazing tour. You'll see that the real original part of Jerusalem is all the way down, way below us, literally hundreds of feet below us, indefensible. So why pick this spot? You know, we Jews are pretty good at picking good real estate. Why pick here? It would be a logical place to make the capital of the Jewish people in the land of Israel. Some people think it's Brooklyn, actually, but in Israel, the logical place would be like Jaffa. You guys been to Jaffa yet? Yeah. There's a natural port, or Haifa, Acre, you know. Why? And the answer is, when I explain it to my Jewish students, I say, you first have to understand who the Jewish people are. I always ask them, what's a Jew? Are we a culture, a race, a people, a nation? Well, we're not a race, because as soon as you come to Israel, you see you got Jews in every size, shape, and color. And anyone can join the Jewish people. Both my son and daughter-in-law are both Yemenites. My son-in-law is so chocolate. His nickname is Chocolate. You know, so it's not a racial thing. And it's not just a religious thing, because even Jews who don't, unfortunately, connect to their Torah and keep the commandments, they're still Jewish. And even Jews who live outside the land of Israel are still Jewish. I say we're a big family. But we're a nation and a religion. We're a ethno-religion, and we choose our holiest spot because of spirituality. That's the essential point of Judaism is spirituality. And the essential point of that spirituality is bringing godliness into the world. If you know your Jewish history, and this is something I talk on, I wrote a book called World Perfect. The greatest Jewish contribution to the world, besides guilt, bagels, junk bonds, leverage buyouts, Einstein, Marx, Freud, 24% of all the Nobel Prizes since 1900, is what?
Bringing God.
Bringing God. Brought to you by the Jewish people. One almighty creator of the universe and one absolute standard of morality is the most impactful, transformative idea in all of human history. And that idea of God is connected to this spot more than anywhere else on the planet Earth. Where is it first mentioned? Anyone know where this is first mentioned as a Jewish holy site? Bible quiz. Where do you think? It's going to be in Genesis, chapter 22, the binding of Isaac story. You guys remember that story? And God says to Abraham, who's living in Hebron, down that way. Today, it's, you know, he said, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and offer him upon one of the mountains that I will show you. He doesn't tell him where. It's a test of faith. Just go. I'll tell you where to stop. Kind of like taxi cabs in Israel. Yeah. 3 days by donkey. Today it's an hour by car. He comes from there. He's probably, if you look for those of you guys sitting higher up, he's probably standing on that ridge over there 3,800 years ago when he first sees Jerusalem. What does he see here? He doesn't see like the city of today. Certainly no new city, even the old city. There may have been some habitation on the lower part of the city that you guys are going to see tomorrow, but what God is telling him is to focus on what? The highest part of the hill. And below that gold dome, and this is another point of tremendous misconception, Most people think, even Jews, the holy spot in the world for the Jewish people is that place down there, the Western Wall Plaza. You guys been there today? You went to the plaza? Yeah. That's not the holiest spot in the world. I'll show you a great picture of what it was there thousands of years ago. Where's the holiest spot in the world for the Jewish people? It's probably underneath the gold dome. What does that gold dome cover? A piece of rock. It's called the Dome of the Rock. In Arabic, Kubat al-Sakhra. But what's the rock? Where is it connected to? That is the spot in Jewish consciousness where the binding of Isaac story takes place in Genesis chapter 22. And my Jewish audiences always ask, why did God pick this spot? You know my answer? Ask God. No, seriously, that's a question. God knows why he picked the spot. But the way I explain it, and this is a point relevant not just to Jews, but to the whole human race, that from God's perspective, to use a modern internet point, the ultimate high-speed spiritual download site on the planet Earth is underneath that gold dome. That is the place. We know the whole world is full of God's glory. You can connect to him anywhere. But they say to speak to God in Jerusalem, outside of Israel, it's a long distance operated assisted call. Here, you just open your mouth and you talk. He's right here. God's presence can be felt here more than anywhere else on the planet Earth. And if you're sensitive to it, and you guys feel it?
Yes.
It's here. You definitely feel it. And the closer you get to that spot, the more you feel it. So that place, therefore, is in Jewish consciousness. With or without a Jewish people being in the land of Israel, with or without a Jewish state, with or without a temple being there, it's intrinsically holy spot. But it's therefore the logical place to build what? The holiest object in the world for the Jewish people. Now when I ask Jews, what's the holiest object? A lot of them think it's a buffet table. It's a Jewish cultural thing. Go to a bar mitzvah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The holiest spot, the holiest object in the world for the Jewish people is the tabernacle. Remember when we leave Egypt, the Jewish people, we go to Mount Sinai, we get the Torah, and God says, in Hebrew, he says, Vasuli mikdash v'shochanti betocham. Make for me a dwelling place, and I will dwell amongst you. Now we know that the God doesn't exist in the universe. The universe exists within God. But God says, so to speak, make me this house, and this will be a tool that you can use as like a power supply to connect to me. And you guys know your scripture, so you know. We build this prefabricated structure. In Hebrew, it's called a mishkan. Tabernacle in English, which is broken down and carried around by the Jewish people for 40 years in the desert. Why 40 years in the desert? Because none of the men would ask for directions. No, seriously. It's a punishment for the story of the spies. But then we know that what happened, just to fast forward through a little Jewish history, got to keep track of my time. I'm getting paid by the word, so I'm trying to get a lot in here. Moses dies, remember, right across the go up a couple hundred feet and look to the east, we'd see where he dies, opposite Jericho. Jewish people, Joshua takes over, the book of Joshua. We enter the land. 7 years of conquest and settling the land. The land is then divided up by a God-directed lottery between the 12 tribes, the descendants of Jacob. And Jerusalem actually sits right between the second smallest tribe of Benjamin and the largest tribe of Judah, which is like, that's where the term Jews come from, by the way. It doesn't mean everyone who has the term Jew is from Judah, but that's the largest tribe, which is from here south. As a matter of fact, 100 yards north of here is the dividing line, the boundary between Benjamin and Judah. It goes right through the center where the temple stood. But for 440 years, that's an unbelievable amount of time, Jerusalem remains a non-Jewish city in the heart of a Jewish country. You guys know that? The whole book of Joshua and Judges, Samuel, until when? Who conquers Jerusalem? It's a really weird idea. Imagine that, like we throw the British out of America in 1776. You guys are mostly Canadians, and they stay in like Georgetown until 2276 with like the Queen on their money and a little British flag sitting there surrounded by America. A Canaanite tribe will live in the area you guys are going to visit tomorrow. The original area of the city, down below at the lowest spur of a hill that begins here and runs down to the south outside the Dung Gate. But after 4.5 centuries, finally, during the reign of King David, right? The second king of Israel, he says, now that we have a king from whom all future kings will come, and ultimately who comes from David? Messiah. Okay? We need a capital city. So what does he do? He sends his general Yoav ben Tsuriah. You guys going to see the movie tomorrow? Probably. Hopefully you get to see this really cool 3D movie where they have him sneaking in. He will conquer the city. It's like the Jewish Trojan horse story from Troy. And from then on, Jerusalem will be the capital of the Jewish people. Does David build the temple? No. For whatever reason, not to go into it now, God says it's not for you. It's going to be for your son, Solomon. And we know Solomon will build what's called the first temple, Beit Rishon in Hebrew. Beit HaMikdash, the first temple, which will stand for 410 years on that spot over there. And just to fast forward through the history, it's destroyed by the Babylonians 2,500 years ago, Nebuchadnezzar. We go into exile in Babylon for 70 years. We come back, we have a second temple period of 420 years, which tragically ends with the Roman destruction of Jerusalem in the year 70. You guys know all this stuff? There's going to be a quiz at the end. You got to know your history. I always say to my students, you can't know where you're going to until you understand where you're coming from. That's why history is so important. We wrote a couple books on it, and you ask my mother, she'll tell you they're like the best books. All Jewish mothers are objective sources of information about what their kids do. Anyway, you're getting a whole lesson in Jewish culture here, no extra charge, we're going into history. But the Romans will destroy Jerusalem in the year 70, not to be rebuilt until Messiah. End of days story. That's one of the scenarios. That's the end of days scenario from the Jewish perspective. What I want to just show you for a few minutes while you're sitting here is give you a sense of what used to be here thousands of years ago. And I actually have, I think it's actually, you can bend this around and like twist it over your head or something.
Yeah.
Around your neck.
Around my neck. You know what they call this microphone in Israel? It's called the Madonna. Not after the Madonna, after the Madonna, the singer. She did whatever. Seriously, another great piece of trivia. If you want to buy one like this, you go into the store and you ask for Madonna. You guys seen this picture before? Okay, this is an amazing picture done by an archaeological architect, actually a non-Jewish person named Lynn Rittmeyer, who worked with Nachum Abidgad and Abiezer when they did the original excavations in Jerusalem starting after the Six-Day War in the 1970s. And it's a reconstruction of Herod's temple, which would be the temple from the time of Jesus. And this is what you have here. You have what's left of what we see today is what you can see depicted in this picture here, which is a giant platform which stretches. If you guys did your tunnel tour, you want to see where you walked? You see the minarets, these Muslim prayer towers, 1, 2, sticker one there?
Yeah.
That's where your tunnel tour ended. You went underground all the way over there. But 2,000 years ago, that wasn't underground. 2,000 years ago, you went from here to there. Okay? Huge. What Herod the Great started to build, and we now know wasn't even completed in his lifetime, it was finished by his children or his grandchildren, was he first expands the Temple Mount platform to make it the largest platform ever built on the planet Earth. It's a trapezoid. You guys remember geometry? Not exactly even. It's a trapezoid 300 meters by 500 meters. You could stick 24 football fields on top of it. Not that you'd ever want to do that, just to give you an idea of the dimensions. It's the largest feature of the old city. It is the largest structure ever built in the land of Israel and the largest platform ever built on the planet Earth. Here's a great point of trivia. Nothing to do with the Bible or God or anything like that, but it could be good on a game show. What's the largest structure with a roof on it in terms of square footage indoors in the world? So they're going to ask you on the game show, where's the world's largest platform? Ding, Jerusalem. You got half the answer. For the $10 million grand prize, where's the largest? The Boeing building in Seattle. None of you guys are from Vancouver here? You can go down and cross over to Seattle. So, and in the middle, the final thing he builds is, of course, the temple itself, which stood, according to most opinions, right underneath where that gold dome, or above the gold dome of today. When I say above it, it was bigger than it. To give you an idea of how big it was, if you go to the top of the gold dome where that circle, half circle is, where it's the shape of the sign of the moon, which is the symbol of Islam, and go 40 feet higher than that, that was the height of the top of the temple. And the actual walls, of which, by the way, when the Romans destroyed Jerusalem, they pushed all the upper part of the wall into the valley below. You going to the southern excavations?
We'll be down in that area.
If you walk out, you can take the underground walk, and you'll come out there. If you walk into the southern excavations below here, you can see where the archaeologists in the 70s uncovered. They dug down through all the dirt to get down to the street level 2,000 years ago, where you could see the huge stones that comprise the western wall and all four walls lying in a huge pile of rubble as they fell 2,000 years ago. It's literally a moment of history frozen in time. It's unbelievable. But when the temple stood, the walls went up to the height, almost to the height of those two, you see the two trees here, right over here, and down to a level that's about 50, 60 feet below the platform of today, that's the Western Wall Plaza. That's all rubble. If you go to the right, you'll see how far, which means, ladies and gentlemen, the height of the wall in the southwest corner was like a 12-story building, 120 feet tall, with another about 8 stories or so of temple on top of it, 20 stories from the bottom up to the top, all beautiful limestone, plastered with made to look like faux marble, gold on the top, something you could see literally from 30 miles away, just reflecting in the light. Absolutely beautiful building. And the rabbis, who didn't even like Herod, he was a pretty nasty guy. He killed everyone he got his hands on, including most of his own family. Augustus Caesar, remember Augustus, who was his patron, said it's better to be one of his pigs than one of his children. It shows you his fathering skills were not exactly the best. But even the rabbis who did not like Herod said that if you haven't seen the house of Herod, you haven't seen a house. And it was considered to be one of the most beautiful structures and the largest in its day, the largest functioning religious site on the planet Earth that was visited by over 1 million Gentile tourists 2,000 years ago. That's before Ella. It's a lot of people. That's not talking about Jews coming to visit during the holidays. So it's to give us a sense of Jerusalem at the height of its glory 2,000 years ago. Sadly, when the Romans destroyed the city, they pushed all the upper freestanding part into the valley below, leaving only the lower part that you have today. And when you go to the wall, you guys can actually go up to the wall?
Yes, we did.
You did already? You're going to go back. So you'll notice that I don't have a picture of it exactly here. When you're standing, just to show you today, brilliant artist you can see. Today when you're standing at the western wall, you're standing over here on rubble. The western wall is not intrinsically holy, it's just a piece of retaining wall built to surround a mountain so you can put a flat floor on top and build a temple in the middle. And there's no intrinsic holiness to it. Today you stand way above what was street level 2,000 years ago, which is lower. And below that street level, even Herod had to build down to the bedrock. So it's an incredible piece of construction, of which the only thing that remains are parts of the western retaining wall. You saw the part that's hidden. Again, 2,000 years ago, you just see this huge wall running 500 meters. The southern wall, the eastern wall is all there. You guys going to the Mount of Olives? I'm sure you're going to be up there.
We went this morning.
You went this morning? That's an amazing view. Isn't that incredible? You went up to where the hotel is over there. Isn't that a great hotel? Built by the Jordanian occupation of Jerusalem by Pan Am. You know why? Because King Hussein, the father of the current king of Jordan's wife, Linda Halaby, Queen Noor, his father owned Pan Am. So they plopped a cemetery in the middle of the graves, in the middle of the Mount of Olives cemetery. Believe it or not, not one room in that hotel, which is probably the most beautiful view in Israel, faces the old city. It's ridiculous, but it's a great place to stay if you're dead. It's a ridiculous location. But anyway, it's beautiful. But from that side, you can see the whole eastern face. The only thing that's didn't survive is, of course, the northern side and the temple itself. So the last little question is, so now we understand why Jerusalem is intrinsically holy. Take the holiest object in the world, which is that tabernacle, build a permanent resting spot for it on the holiest place in the world. It's like taking a computer that has a unique plug that only plugs into one, like you don't have the right currency or voltage, your appliance doesn't work right. You have a tremendous concentration of spirituality in the world when that building stood on that site. But even though the building is gone, like I said before, the site is still intrinsically holy. So the last little piece of the riddle, ladies and gentlemen, is, so why is the Western Wall holy to the Jewish people today? And you should know throughout history, Jews went to many different spots to try and get a glimpse of the site. Today there is, if you know the term in Jewish law, halacha, you guys ever heard of it? Jewish law, halacha, has certain restrictions about going up on the holiest of sites. You're not supposed to wear leather shoes. Remember in the Bible, whenever an angel appears to someone, what is the first thing he says? Take off your shoes. This is holy ground, and that's the holiest ground. And you have to be in a state of ritual purity, which has nothing to do with taking a shower. It's a spiritual state we cannot do at the moment. And not only that, the only person, what was in the inner room of the temple and the tabernacle? The Ark of the Covenant. By the way, in Herod's time, second temple, what was in that inner room called the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh HaKadoshim, was empty. Where is the Ark? Ask Steven Spielberg. No, it disappeared, probably hidden before the destruction of the first temple, but the site is intrinsically holy, and the only person ever allowed to walk on that space where the binding of Isaac took place, Genesis chapter 22, is whom? The high priest, the Kohen Gadol, on only one day of the year, which is, anyone know? Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. So because of the problems of being ritual impurity and, of course, not knowing exactly where the spot is, the general opinion amongst the rabbis today is not to walk on the spot, although much of Jewish absence from this place has more to do with Muslims not allowing Jews to control the site. Because from the 7th century onward, we didn't even touch that topic. There's been a Muslim holy site up there, which, by the way, for Sunni Muslims, not Shiites, is their third holiest spot. By the way, when the loudspeaker goes off, you all heard it, Allah Akbar, that thing? Yeah, previous job. When the loudspeaker goes off, all the Muslims in the world are going to turn south. Even the ones over there turn their backs to their gold dome, which is, by the way, a shrine, not a mosque. The black dome is actual mosque. And pray south to Saudi Arabia. But every Jew in the world is praying towards Israel, and Israel are praying towards Jerusalem, and Jerusalem are praying towards that spot over there. Because like I said, that's where God's Shekhinah, God's presence ultimately sits and can be felt than anywhere else. Got it? Clear?
Got it.
Ready for the quiz?
Yes.